Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos. Today I want to discuss two topics that I get asked about a lot. Those topics are how the USA rating system works and how the USA points list is laid out. Tangentially, though closely related to the second topic, we're also going to be talking about how team selection works in the USA. So first up, let's talk about the rating system. In America, we have 5 different ratings, well technically 6, but the highest rating you can get on the system is an A rating. You can also have a B, C, D, and E rating. And then if you don't have a rating, you are unrated, and that will show up as a U. And so these ratings are used for seeding purposes and can be obtained at any tournament, even local tournaments. And so we're going to take a quick look at the rating chart and discuss a few different examples of how that works. And you can find links to all of these things in the video description. Alright, so the USFA classification reference chart. Essentially what this means is this is how many fencers you need in a tournament and what places they need to finish in order to make that tournament a certain level of event. And at that level of event, what rating you can earn from it. So the simplest one is an E1 event. Now, the minimum number of competitors you need in this is 6 people. Nobody in the tournament has to be rated. It doesn't matter where anyone finishes, and the winner of this tournament can earn an E rating. The second one, which is slightly more complicated, is a D1 event. Now, you have to have at least 15 competitors in this kind of tournament, and 4 of them must be E's or higher. And then, as long as 2 of those E's make the top 8, first place gets a D, second, third, and fourth place, or just second and both third places, will get an E rating. If there are less than that, less people than that, less E's than that at the tournament overall, or less E's than that in the top 8, then it will drop down to an E1 rating and only the winner will be able to get an E. Going down the list, it gets a little bit more complicated, like progressively more complicated the higher the rating is. So let's look at a B2, for example. In this event, you must have at least 25 people. There must be at least 2 B's, 2 C's, and 2 D's, or higher. So these requirements would also be filled by just having 6 B's, for example. Now, 2 B's and 2 C's must make the top 8. And the reason that we have these specifications for making the top 8 is because we don't want 2 people to show up in pools just to give their rating and then just dip out immediately and have the whole rating of the tournament be strong while the actual tournament itself is quite weak. So in this tournament, if all of those conditions are met, then first place would get a B, second, third, and fourth would get C's, 5 through 8 would get D's, 9 through 12 would get E ratings, and everybody else gets nothing. And then the most complicated one, which is an A4 tournament, you must have at least 64 people, at least 12 A's, 12 B's, and 12 C's, or higher, and then the top 8 must contain at least 4 A's, and the top 12 must contain at least 4 B's, again, or higher. So in this tournament, top 8 get an A, 9 through 16 get a B, 17 through 24 get C's, 25 through 32 get D's, and 33 through 48 get E ratings. So this tournament, you need a ton of people to make it work, and it's so strong that a lot of people get strong ratings from this tournament. Also, side note, our Division 1 North American Cups, or NACs as I'll be calling them in this video, those are all automatically A4 events, regardless of who is in them. So now that we've discussed that, let's talk about the number. Ratings don't just have an A, you have like an A21 or a B24. And what that means is when you earn a rating, you get a number associated with the year that rating was earned. So if I won an A4 tournament this year, I would get an A24. And the reason we have that is because, first of all, an A24 is worth more than an A23, is worth more than an A22, etc. But second of all, ratings will degrade every 4 years. So if I'm still an A24 at the end of 2028, at the end of 2027, at the beginning of the 2028 season, my A24 will turn into a B28. And that will just continue to degrade over time if I don't replace that letter. So these ratings, in addition to being used for seeding, are also used to determine the entry for certain tournaments. So for example, we have 3 different divisions of tournaments in the US in addition to our age group splits. And so in order to be able to fence in a Division 3 event, a fencer has to have a D, an E, or be unrated. Cs are not allowed to fence in this tournament. And then Division 2 is very similar. You can only fence a Division 2 event if you have a C, a D, an E, or are unrated. And then Division 1 events, you must have an A, a B, or a C in order to participate. And those are the tournaments that get you senior national points. Division 2 and Division 3 events are just used to give fencers who want another event when they travel a little more experience. And it's a good idea in my opinion because it gives people just one more event so they don't have to travel quite so far for just one event if they are, for example, like a low rated junior or a low rated cadet. So I actually like those systems a lot. One of the upsides of this system is that earning ratings is a lot of fun. It's an exciting thing for kids to talk about, and they're constantly kind of using that as a way to compete with each other, especially in the same club. Like, oh, I've got my C, when are you going to get yours? And that kid is going to be really motivated to go to a tournament and make sure he gets a C so that he doesn't have to endure that anymore. And so I've seen that be a really big motivator for people getting a new letter. And earning a new rating can be a big boost of confidence and a nice little benchmark for progress. There are many more downsides of the system, though, in my opinion, and those... So, for example, because ratings can be earned at literally any USFA tournament, not just nationals, like local events as well, it basically makes the ratings pointless. And because there's different densities of rated fencers in each region, certain regions can have many more A's, or certain regions it can be much more difficult to get a certain letter, which kind of makes the actual meaning of each one vary wildly. So, for example, there are many more tournaments in the Northeast region, and so for that reason it's much easier to get an A from that region than it would be to get one from, like, Texas, where I just was for the last several years. And because ratings can be obtained at literally any tournament, including local tournaments, it's very common for clubs to organize tournaments to farm ratings, where fencers with higher ratings will intentionally lose bouts to lower rated fencers in order to boost their ratings. And all of these things combine together to make ratings essentially meaningless. I've also seen fencers completely panic when they see they're about to fence someone who is higher rated than them, and they basically just lose by something that's written on a piece of paper somewhere that has no relevance or bearing on the actual bout at all. Like, I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen a fencer see who they're about to fence and be like, oh my god, I'm about to fence a B-rated fencer. I'm only C-rated. Like, I can't beat this person. But like, shut up. That's stupid. Those letters don't mean anything. Just focus on what's in front of you. But that's a hard thing to communicate to someone when they have that shiny B or even more coveted A next to their name. The next thing I want to talk about is the US points list. And many of the questions I get asked about this are like, why are you guys given so many points for each event that you do? Why are there non-Americans on the points list? Why are there 2 different points lists? How does team selection work if there are multiple points lists? And so essentially we're going to address all those questions, but let's go in order. In the US, points are obtained at national and regional tournaments. For Division 1 events, or the senior points list, you can only get those points at national tournaments. And for events like junior, cadet, and the youth groups, you can get points regionally, but it's not as many points as you would get nationally. And in some cases, points from those events are used as qualifiers to even enter the national events, which I think is a really good idea. Individual selection for all of these tournaments internationally is determined entirely by points. There's no coach discretion. It's just if you have the number of points, you go. And for each of those different kinds of events, for cadet international events, you get 20 people. For junior and senior international events, you get 12 people. And the only exception to that is if there's an event in your own country, regardless of what event it is, that number jumps up to 30. And then you also get additional people to fill out each pool. So for example, if you got 30 people and there's one pool of 6, you would be given one more person to make that pool of 6 a pool of 7. And so if you get really lucky and there are 6 pools of 6, you could theoretically get up to 36 people, but that's the theoretical maximum, and it doesn't happen very often. That's how the generic World Cups are done. The championship events like zonals and world championships are 4 for junior and senior and 3 for cadets. And so in all the years I've been competing, I've seen no exception to the rule in America where you get to go if you have enough points. I've never seen someone bypass that for any reason at all, which in my opinion is a very good thing. It leaves nothing up to subjectivity or a coach's decisions. Basically, if you have enough points to go to something, you're going to go, regardless of whether someone likes you if you don't have enough points or doesn't like you if you do have enough points. And this is a complaint I've heard many times in many different systems in other countries, like, oh, I have enough points where I should be able to go to this event, but the coach chose someone lower than me on the points list to go anyway, or someone will tell me, like, yeah, even though I'm 20th on the points list, I got injured, I didn't have a good season, but the coach wanted to send me anyway. In the US, none of that matters. If you have a bad season, you're not going to get to go over people who have a better season than you. If you have an injury, that's very unfortunate, but you'll have to earn the points again that you need to travel to these tournaments. So I really like the way that system works. Now, the next thing I get asked a lot is why are there 2 different points lists in the US? And that is a really good question. So let's start with the fact that there is a rolling list and a team list. We'll talk about the team list first because it's simpler to understand. At the beginning of each season, at whatever the date is that the season starts, the team list gets reset to 0. Every single result falls off and every single person starts from nothing. And so essentially, each time you get a result, it's just added straight onto your total from 0. And at the end of the season, you'll have a list that accurately reflects what happened over the course of the year. The rolling list is never reset. Each tournament lasts approximately a year, and it's replaced by the equivalent tournament the following year. So for example, if we have the first senior event is in October, last year, but this year the first senior event is in November, then the October result from last year will be replaced with the November result from this year because it's the first one of that category. So essentially your points last for about a year. And because those are never reset, that gives you not an accurate feeling of how you've been doing this season, but how you've been doing over the past year. And so for seeding purposes, this rolling list also includes non-Americans. That way, when they fence in our NACs, because everyone is seeded based on their points first and then their rating, we can seed foreigners based on the same criteria as us. So, for example, Ziad El-Sisi and Faris Farjani are both living in the United States and they frequently attend our Division 1 NACs. And for that reason, they both show up on our points list so that they can be easily seeded into those tournaments. For most of the season, the rolling list is used for World Cup selection, but at some point in the season, they switch to the team list. And the date that the team list becomes used for selection during the season is different each year. And I believe is decided by the national coach of each weapon because the decision point is different for all of them and it changes every year. And switching to the team list too early, in my opinion, arbitrarily makes certain tournaments more or less valuable than others, especially in the cadet list where the range can vary a lot and you get 20 people. I remember last season one of my kids was really close to going to a cadet tournament and he was really excited, but they switched to team list before one of the entries and he went and looked again and realized he was like 10 points lower than, not 10 points, 10 places on the points list lower than he thought he was. So situations like that happen a lot, and it doesn't really make sense to me why we switch so early. The team list, in my opinion, should be used just for team selection for world championships and zonal tournaments. That way you have an accurate representation of how the season went for those events, because those are basically happening at the very end of the season, and an accurate representation of how you've been doing for the whole year for everything else. That's my opinion. So let's take a look at how these points lists actually work and how the results are counted on these lists. So this is the list of all the points lists for all the weapons. You can get here by going to this link, which I will put in the video information. We're going to look at men's saber because that's my weapon and I know the most about it. So all the lists have the same basic underlying principle. You have Group 1 results and Group 2 results. Group 1 results are just the results that you get nationally, and Group 2 results are the results that you get internationally. So Group 1 results, for the most part, will be filled with your NAC results, and Group 2 results will be filled with your World Cup results. Now, if you look at the US points list here, you'll see that only a few of the top guys, like Colin Heathcock, Eli Dershowitz, Mitchell Sarin, and Andrew Dotto, have entirely filled out their Group 2 results, and it seems odd to me that there's only 2 NACs counted when there are 5 tournaments during a season for Div 1 points. And so essentially what this does is it really undervalues our tournaments, especially as you get later in the season. And our national championships are in April. And quite often, by the time you get to national championships, not a lot of our top fencers are actually going, which creates a very strange situation because the national championships is supposed to be an important event in each sport. But for us, nobody really seems to care about them. And there are a few obvious ways to make this happen, in my opinion. One would be to have, first of all, just have more Group 1 values. They do this at the junior and the cadet level to discourage people from traveling, or to encourage people to go to more of the national tournaments that we have. And I think it would make sense to do that for the international results as well. And then another thing that you could do is you could have a third category that only counts your national championship. That way you could make the national championship worth more. If there's a certain point division at the end of the season, as long as you're within the range of what a tournament is worth, you could theoretically still qualify because you just get straight points added on from nationals. The last thing that we could do is we could just make national championships held much earlier in the season. I know, for example, the French have already had their national championships, so any of those things would work to revalue the national championships in the US, because right now they are quite weak. Anyway, the other thing that I haven't mentioned is that when you fill up your Group 2 results entirely, you get any excess points are carried over into your Group 1 results. So Eli is a good example. If, for example, he does well enough at a World Cup to receive less than 840 points, but more than 238 points, that World Cup result will actually go into his Group 1 results. So essentially you can have up to 6 international events, but only a maximum of 2 national events. And if you scroll down past the list of all the fencers who have points, you get to these pages at the bottom which show you where the points come from. So this will tell you that each of the fencers here got these points by getting these places at these tournaments. So if we look at them, each of the tournaments are supposed to be on a scale where if you win a senior tournament and it's a 1.0 rating, you'll get 1,000 points. If the tournament is rated higher than that, you'll get more points for winning, and if the tournament is rated lower than that, you'll get less points for winning. So, for example, if you are fencing at a tournament that is a 1.2, you'll get 1,200 points for winning. If you're fencing at a tournament that is a 0.8, you'll get 800 points for winning. And that formula is complicated, but is essentially based on who actually shows up to the tournament. Are the strong people there? Yes, then it's highly rated. Are international people coming in, making it even stronger? Then it's going to be more highly rated. Are half the people away because there's a World Cup going on? Well, that tournament's going to be quite weak. So if we look here, let's take a look at Colin. For example, he finished 26th place at the Division 1 NAC in October. That NAC was a 1.1. He got 335.5 points for that. And so if we scroll up, we'll see right here, that point total did not count because it was not one of his top 2 results. Going back down here, he got 11th place at the December NAC, and he got 12th place at the January NAC, and each of these was worth about 570 points. So if we go back up, you see 2 results here that are both about 570 points. So it's a pretty easy way to check where all the points are coming from. And so if we go down even further, you get to see that these are where the group 2 results are coming from. And this is how everyone placed at all the World Cups. Using Colin as an example again, he got a lot of points from one tournament where he finished top 8. That was the Seoul Grand Prix in Korea. And he got a ton more points from getting first in Tunis. Also got a lot of points from finishing 7th in Algeria. And those points are all added to his total. So that's more or less how the points list works. A few other things that I didn't mention are, let's first switch back to the rolling list. So, rolling. If you see a hashtag next to a fencer's name, it means that that fencer is still in the age category below the one that's being represented on the chart that you're looking at right now. So the fact that Colin has a little hashtag next to his name, and Cody has a little hashtag next to his name, that just means that both of those guys are juniors right now. And so the other thing that you might notice is that there are a few names that are in italics. And those names indicate that those fencers are foreign fencers. So they will be on the rolling list for seeding purposes, but they will not be on the team list for selection purposes. So if you're in a point in the season when selection for World Cups is being looked at on the rolling list, those names just get skipped. So that's pretty much everything about the points list that I wanted to talk about. The next thing I wanted to discuss, which was a frequently asked question that I get, is why do we get hundreds of points for every result instead of the 32 or 48 that the FIE gives us? And the reason for that is because we want these tournaments to be able to represent how well fencers are doing overall, not just how well they're doing at their level. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you win a cadet NAC, you get 400 points. If you win a junior NAC, you get 700 points. And if you win a senior NAC, you get 1,000 points. And what that means is that if a cadet wins a cadet NAC, then wins a senior NAC, he'll get 1,400 points. To reflect the fact that he is doing well at the senior level, those points will come down from the senior points list to the junior points list, to the cadets points list, even all the way to the Y14 points list. If you have a Y14 fencer doing well in senior events, those points will trickle down and be worth a lot to them. So I actually really like how this system reflects all the levels and just kind of neatly pushes them into one list. So we had discussed how you can have up to 6 international results if you fill up your Group 2 results with international results, and your additional international results are worth more than your national results. So let's take a look at Lee Kiefer. She is having an amazing season, and the season is so good that she's gotten first place at 2 different World Cups, second place at a World Cup, and third place at 3 different World Cups. And by this system, the most points you can possibly have is 14,400 points, which would happen if you won 6 tournaments. 2,400 is the most you can get from a full strength 2.0 Grand Prix or World Cup or World Championship event by winning that event. And if you get 6 of those, it's worth 14,040 points. And if you look at Lee's point total, she currently has 13,128 points. That's the most points that I've ever seen anybody have, ever. That's crazy. Nice job, Lee. If anybody can point me to any list at any point in the past where someone has had more than that, I would be very interested to see it and maybe just talk to that person about the season that they were having, because that sounds really cool. So with that, I think that's everything that I can think of on this topic. There are certainly questions that I didn't answer. There's just not enough time in the world to go over every single intricacy of this. So if you have a relevant question about any sort of selection or anything on the points list or the rating list, anything, leave it in the comments and I will do my best to answer all those questions. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my Emerald and Platinum patrons, David Amrani, Jonah Atkinson, Tiffany Miller, Roman Bruce, and Veronica Saran for their very generous contributions to this channel. Any other names you see are gold patrons. Thank you guys so much for the contributions. They really help out a lot and will enable me to make more videos like this. If you have any more ideas for what you want to see next, you can vote on those things on my Patreon page. To help support the channel, you can find links to my Patreon, PayPal, and Venmo accounts in the video information. Thanks guys, see you next time.